The brutal murder of Lisa Valdez in San Francisco in 1998 cast a long shadow, leaving a promising life extinguished and a family in agonizing suspense. For over a decade, her case remained a haunting cold case, a testament to the elusive nature of justice. However, through the relentless dedication of investigators and the transformative power of modern forensic science, the mystery eventually unraveled, bringing a measure of closure to a tragedy that had lingered for years. Born on the 6th of September, 1961, in San Francisco, California, Lisa Valdez grew up alongside a brother under the devoted care of her mother. While her father was absent from their lives, Lisa nurtured an incredibly strong and harmonious bond with her mother, a relationship often admired by those who witnessed its apparent perfection. During her formative teenage years, Lisa discovered a profound affinity for dance, which quickly blossomed into one of her most cherished pursuits. Simultaneously, she demonstrated a sharp curiosity for contemporary technology, venturing into the nascent realm of information technology at a time when it was still in its early stages. Her forward-thinking nature was evident. She was already utilizing email when many of her contemporaries were still unfamiliar with its concept. This early enthusiasm for technology would ultimately shape her professional trajectory. Following her college education, Lisa secured a position as a software analyst within San Francisco, steadily building a commendable career path. Sometime thereafter, her mother, drawing upon her accumulated savings, purchased a modest studio apartment for Lisa in a sought-after neighborhood. Though compact, the dwelling was situated on an elevated terrain, affording a breathtaking panoramic view of the city below. Lisa resided there independently, consistently advancing in her professional life while diligently carving out time for her family and upholding her commitment to dance, regularly attending weekly practice sessions with her closest confidant. On the evening of May 16, 1998, at the age of 36, Lisa extended an invitation to her mother and several dear family friends for a social gathering. Once the guests had departed, her mother remained briefly to assist with tidying up before heading to her own residence. As she left, Lisa assured her mother she would initiate contact the following day. However, that promised call never materialized. Initially, Lisa's mother speculated that her daughter was simply preoccupied. Lisa had a scheduled dance session that day, prompting her mother to patiently await communication. Yet the entirety of the day elapsed without any word from Lisa. The subsequent day, her mother attempted to reach Lisa directly, but her calls went unanswered. This disturbing pattern of silence persisted, with Lisa failing to respond to any of her mother's repeated attempts to connect. By the fourth day, a Monday, Lisa's professional colleagues contacted her mother, conveying their concern that Lisa had neither appeared for work nor responded to their calls. This behavior was highly anomalous for Lisa, who was recognized for her dependability and had never been absent without prior notification. Overwhelmed with anxiety, her mother decided to travel to Lisa's apartment complex to personally check on her well-being. Upon her arrival at the apartment complex, Lisa's mother was met with a distressing sight. Police tape cordoned off the building, and numerous law enforcement personnel were present. Approaching the officers, she anxiously inquired about the situation. The police informed her that only a few hours prior, residents had reported a peculiar odor originating from one of the apartments to the building manager. When the manager investigated, he found Lisa's apartment door ajar. Upon opening it, he was immediately confronted with the grim discovery of a body on the floor, prompting his immediate call to the authorities. Officers swiftly identified the deceased as Lisa Valdez. She was found partially clothed, and her body bore unequivocal signs of extreme trauma, clearly indicative of a violent homicide. Based on the advanced state of decomposition, investigators approximated that she had been deceased for several days. Furthermore, a suspicion of sexual assault arose due to her underwear being found dislocated near her body. The apartment itself was marred by extensive blood stains on both the flooring and the bedding. Curiously, the television remained powered on, and the air conditioning unit was set to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. While the living space appeared somewhat untidy, detectives later confirmed that this was characteristic of Lisa's habits, as she was not known for fastidious neatness. There was no evidence of forced entry. All her valuables, including jewelry, were conspicuously visible and undisturbed. The only items notably absent were her keys and a gym bag. An additional, particularly unsettling detail emerged. The assailant had severed a segment of Lisa's long hair and removed it from the scene. This, combined with the multiple injuries inflicted upon her, strongly implied a deeply personal motive behind the crime. Detectives began to theorize that the perpetrator likely had a prior acquaintance with Lisa and, for some undisclosed reason, harbored intense animosity toward her. The absence of any forced entry indicators further supported the notion that Lisa knew her attacker. Moreover, the apartment complex was secured by fencing requiring either a key or permission from a resident for access. Law enforcement officers immediately commenced interviewing the complex's residents, hoping someone might have observed the attacker. Their efforts quickly yielded a significant lead. One of Lisa's neighbors recounted that 2 days before the discovery of her body, having just returned from a trip, he noticed a section of his front door's metal frame was bent, accompanied by a faint blood mark. He had reported this to the building manager, but they opted against involving the police, as there was no clear sign of a break-in. Detectives became nearly certain that the individual responsible for Lisa's murder was also connected to this incident, though the underlying motive remained perplexing. One hypothesis suggested the killer might have attempted to enter the neighbor's apartment and was potentially caught by Lisa, leading to her murder. Conversely, another theory considered the possibility that the attempted forced entry occurred after Lisa's death, which seemed an odd sequence of events. Detectives also consulted with the housekeeper who regularly cleaned Lisa's apartment. She recalled that 2 days before Lisa's body was discovered, she had used her key to access the complex and attempted to open Lisa's door, only to find it obstructed from the inside. Peering through a small gap, she briefly saw a partially clothed woman on the floor and distinctly heard a man's voice. Assuming she was intruding on a private moment, she promptly departed. Police later inferred that Lisa was likely already deceased at this juncture, and the male voice belonged to her killer, who was still present within the apartment. The housekeeper also remembered a notable detail. She believed she glimpsed a black zippered bag near the body, though her certainty was low given her brief view. Significantly, an untouched envelope containing cash intended for the housekeeper, as Lisa habitually left it for her scheduled visit when she knew she wouldn't be home, was found taped to the interior of Lisa's apartment door. The presence of this uncollected payment suggested that Lisa was probably attacked after her mother left, sometime between midnight and the early morning hours, which was her usual routine for leaving the money. This timeline was subsequently reinforced by residents on the floor below, who reported hearing heavy thuds from above that night, followed by someone descending the stairs, though they did not identify the individual. While medical professionals began their examination of Lisa's remains, detectives continued their painstaking search for evidence within her apartment. They soon observed a peculiar detail. The toilet seat was upright, an unusual finding for a lone female resident. Forensic experts analyzed the surface and recovered a partial fingerprint that did not match Lisa's. Police then collected fingerprints from all of Lisa's acquaintances and family members who might have visited her apartment, but none yielded a match. This led investigators to believe the fingerprint likely belonged to the perpetrator. The medical expert's report furnished further critical insights. Lisa's body had sustained over 20 stab wounds, but due to the extensive decomposition, a definitive conclusion regarding sexual assault could not be made. However, they identified defensive wounds on her body, indicating Lisa had actively resisted her assailant. Crucially, experts also discovered skin particles beneath her fingernails, strongly suggesting they belonged to the attacker, and these were immediately dispatched to the laboratory for analysis. Concurrently, forensic experts examining other evidence from the apartment made a pivotal discovery. One of the pillowcases was heavily stained with blood. Initial analysis indicated that not all the blood was Lisa's. Some distinct stains were present, leading to the pillowcase being sent for in-depth examination. Investigators posited that the killer might have accidentally injured himself while stabbing Lisa, a frequent occurrence in such violent encounters due to the potential for a knife to slip. This hypothesis was bolstered by another finding. Inside the toilet, they located 2 bandages from a first aid kit, which the assailant might have used to control his bleeding. He could also have inadvertently left his fingerprints on the toilet seat while discarding the bandages. DNA analysis confirmed that the blood on the pillowcase originated from an unidentified male whose genetic profile was absent from the FBI database at that time. The skin particles recovered from under Lisa's nails also correlated with this same individual, as did the faint blood stain found on her neighbor's door. Despite the lack of an immediate match in the DNA database, detectives now possessed a complete genetic profile of the perpetrator. They commenced comparing this profile with samples from known offenders in their system who had committed crimes in Lisa's vicinity, and simultaneously began a more rigorous examination of Lisa's social circle. Lisa's mother revealed that Lisa had recently been dating a man named Albert Kiddo, and they had plans for a date the day after the murder. However, Kiddo had canceled their arrangement just a few days prior. Detectives brought Kiddo in for questioning and promptly observed a significant cut on his hand. Given the possibility of the killer injuring his hand during the attack, Kiddo immediately became a person of interest. Despite his denials of involvement in the homicide, detectives collected his fingerprints and DNA samples for laboratory comparison. To their astonishment, none of his samples matched the blood on the pillowcase or the skin particles from under Lisa's nails. These unmistakably belonged to another individual. Investigators continued their pursuit of other potential suspects, turning their attention to the messages left on Lisa's answering machine in the days preceding the murder. They compiled a list of 40 callers, but one particularly peculiar message captured their attention. Just a few hours before the crime, while Lisa was still hosting guests, a man called, but she did not answer. He left an unusual message. "You know how it goes. Toita. Hey, Lisa, are you home?" Police played this message for Lisa's friend, who instantly identified the voice as belonging to Albert Robinson, a colleague of Lisa's. Robinson had reportedly expressed romantic interest in Lisa on several occasions, but she did not reciprocate his feelings. They continued to interact professionally and socially among mutual acquaintances, with Lisa considering him purely a friend. Several days after the murder, during the memorial service held for the victim's family, another unsettling incident transpired. Robinson attended the service and delivered a eulogy that bewildered everyone present. He asserted that he and Lisa were deeply in love, with intentions of marriage and starting a family. Lisa's friends and her mother emphatically refuted Robinson's claims, stating they were entirely unfounded. Lisa had indeed confided in them about Robinson's interest, but she harbored no romantic sentiments for him. Lisa's mother also underscored their exceptionally close relationship, asserting that Lisa would never have concealed such significant life plans from her. Robinson was brought in for questioning, where he denied any role in the murder, professing his affection for Lisa and claiming he would never harm her. However, he declined to provide his DNA sample and fingerprints to the police. All these circumstantial details strongly pointed toward Robinson as the prime suspect. Detectives persisted in seeking new leads, reasoning that if Robinson was genuinely fixated on Lisa and his affections were unreturned, such a rejection could have impelled him to commit the heinous act. The severe nature of the crime powerfully suggested personal motivations, and the fact that the perpetrator had severed a lock of her hair and taken it could be directly linked to his obsession. Detectives eventually secured a search warrant for his residence, where they uncovered something truly extraordinary. Dozens of photographs of Lisa were prominently displayed throughout his home, further corroborating Robinson's alarming fixation. Yet, Robinson maintained his innocence regarding the murder. This time, he finally provided his fingerprints and DNA sample. Detectives were almost certain he was the perpetrator, but they were astounded when the laboratory results showed no match with the samples discovered at the victim's apartment. Consequently, Robinson was removed from the list of suspects, and law enforcement continued their arduous and often frustrating search for new avenues of investigation. Despite their diligent efforts, detectives repeatedly encountered impasses, and the case languished unsolved for many years. Investigators consistently sought updates on the comparison of the killer's DNA and fingerprints with evolving databases, perpetually hoping that he would surface due to involvement in other criminal activities. However, this never materialized. Initially, police found it perplexing that an individual capable of such a brutal crime was not already present in existing databases, as they doubted it represented his first serious offense. Over the ensuing years, police repeatedly checked for database matches, but their efforts consistently yielded no results. Lisa's mother participated in multiple television interviews, passionately appealing to anyone with information to come forward. Yet detectives remained without any fresh leads. In 2010, a pivotal development occurred. Detectives learned that the FBI had begun implementing a novel DNA technology. This innovative method facilitated the comparison of suspect samples with individuals already in the database to identify close relatives. Unlike genetic genealogy, which would emerge some years later, this technique was effective primarily for direct familial links, allowing experts, for instance, to pinpoint the father or a sibling of the DNA owner if their sample was present. Lacking any other viable leads, in 2011, police formally requested such a comparison and commenced an anxious wait. On the 2nd of September, 2011, the lead detective received a momentous telephone call from the FBI. The news conveyed was both positive and entirely unanticipated. They informed him that the familial comparison would not be necessary. The reason was astounding. Prior to conducting such an advanced comparison, experts routinely retested the suspect's DNA sample. This time, 13 years after the initial murder investigation, the reanalysis yielded a perfect match. The DNA from the blood and skin particles recovered from Lisa's apartment precisely corresponded to a sample from Anthony Hughes, then 52 years old, who had only very recently been entered into the FBI database. Hughes possessed an extensive criminal record spanning several decades, yet none of his prior offenses had necessitated the submission of his DNA sample to the FBI database. However, due to recent legislative changes in California, all criminals were now required to provide DNA samples regardless of the crime's severity. Consequently, Anthony Hughes' sample found its way into the database after his arrest for a minor shoplifting infraction. Furthermore, his fingerprints had also been entered into relevant databases, and these impeccably matched the fingerprint discovered on the toilet seat in Lisa's apartment, with experts even pinpointing the specific digit that left the impression with considerable ease. Before proceeding with Hughes' arrest, detectives diligently sought any additional evidence that might link him to the crime. Here, they encountered a surprising revelation. 13 years prior, police had reviewed messages left for Lisa on her answering machine, but their focus had exclusively been on calls made before the murder. Now, after so many years, detectives unexpectedly uncovered that Anthony Hughes had actually called Lisa just one day after her death and left a message. Its content was innocuous and had raised no suspicions at the time. However, had police investigated Anthony back then, they would have not only uncovered his extensive criminal history, but also another vital piece of information. Upon re-examining Lisa's personal effects, detectives located Anthony's phone number in her address book, confirming that the victim indeed knew him. Further discussions with Lisa's friends revealed that she had, in fact, dated Anthony for a period during high school. Armed with this compelling body of evidence, detectives finally possessed all the necessary components to confront the suspect. At that point, Hughes lacked a stable residence, prompting law enforcement to proceed cautiously to prevent any potential flight. They apprehended him under the pretense that the police were conducting an investigation into a series of San Francisco robberies, and he surrendered without resistance. During the interrogation, detectives initially questioned him about the purported robberies before subtly transitioning to discussions about Anthony's criminal record. Eventually, they posed the direct question: did he know Lisa Valdez? Initially, he denied it, but upon being shown her photograph, he conceded they had known each other in high school. Anthony also asserted that he had not seen her since the late 1980s. Over the course of several hours, detectives probed him about their past relationship and any recent contact. Finally, they directly confronted him with the irrefutable evidence of his DNA found in Lisa's apartment from 1998. Anthony abruptly burst into tears and requested a pen and paper. Believing he was prepared to confess, they provided the requested items. To their astonishment, the man began striking himself with the pen. Officers had to physically restrain him as he continued to weep and vehemently declare that they were attempting to frame him for a crime he did not commit. Subsequent to this, Anthony Hughes was formally charged with Lisa's murder, and detectives informed Lisa's relatives that her killer had at last been apprehended. Nevertheless, they faced an additional 4-year waiting period before the trial commenced. In court, Anthony Hughes initially exuded a confident, almost disdainful demeanor, frequently smirking. However, as the legal proceedings advanced, he began appearing with a Bible clutched in hand and a cross adorning his neck, an act the detective perceived as a deliberate attempt to influence the jury. His defense attorney vigorously argued that Anthony could not have physically perpetrated the murder, citing a diagnosed condition from 5 years prior that had significantly weakened his muscles, rendering repetitive movements extremely challenging. The lawyer contended that Anthony would have been incapable of inflicting over 20 stab wounds on the victim. Yet medical reports from the year of the murder unequivocally demonstrated that Anthony's condition was then under control and responsive to treatment. Furthermore, the prosecution presented far more compelling evidence directly linking him to the crime scene. His skin was discovered beneath Lisa's fingernails, his blood on a pillowcase, and his distinct fingerprint on the toilet seat. Despite the weight of this evidence, Anthony steadfastly maintained that he had not seen Lisa since the late 1980s. The prosecution's theory posited that Anthony had contacted Lisa and visited her home, where he attempted to initiate sexual intimacy. Upon her refusal, he became enraged, leading him to kill her, sever a portion of her hair, abscond with it, and then flee the premises. Ultimately, the jury unanimously found him guilty of first-degree murder. However, a complication arose concerning a conviction for sexual assault. The prosecution strongly believed Anthony had indeed assaulted the victim, but due to the advanced state of decomposition, there was no direct forensic evidence to conclusively confirm it. The situation was further intricate when, prior to sentencing, Anthony legally challenged the assault charges, contending that the 13-year delay in bringing these specific charges violated his constitutional rights. As a consequence, the primary charges were controversially reduced from first-degree murder to second-degree murder, resulting in a less severe punitive outcome. Anthony eventually received a life sentence, though with the possibility of parole after serving just 16 years, making him eligible for release in 2031 at the age of 72. Since his sentencing, Anthony Hughes has been incarcerated and consistently asserts his innocence. Lisa's relatives hold out hope that his future parole requests will be denied, which is highly probable, as a refusal to acknowledge guilt is frequently interpreted by parole boards as a fundamental lack of remorse, thereby indicating the offender does not merit release. The Lisa Valdez case remains a poignant testament to the relentless pursuit of justice, underscoring how even in the face of agonizing delays and misleading paths, the unyielding efforts of dedicated investigators, coupled with transformative advancements in forensic science, can ultimately bring long-awaited answers. It stands as a powerful reminder that while the pain of loss may never fully subside, the promise of accountability can eventually illuminate even the darkest of cold cases.